everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar on documents. My name is Haley Z, and I am a member of the Tripleseat support team. If you've joined us here before for this docs webinar, welcome back. Today is going to be very similar, going over the differences between your document template and your layouts, mainly focusing on your documents and settings, but with just a few, minor aesthetic tips and tricks along the way. If you do have any questions as we go, feel free to send them into the Q&A section of BigMarker, and my teammates Mark and Matt will be happy to answer them as we go. Also, everyone will be receiving an email after we conclude within just a few hours of a recording of this webinar. I'm going to turn off my camera now so we can get started and I can share my screen. All right, so first I want to go over your documents on the event level and the difference between the template and your layouts. So the template here is always going to be the very first thing you see on your documents. So it's a little bit bolder. You'll notice it's like a link, right there rather than these PDF links. This is going to be the edit mode of your events. So where you can add Picklist items, make event changes, add, billing details or notes on a per event basis. The layouts here underneath, those are going to be customer facing or internal, but these are not going to be editable on the event level. They'll just pull the information from what you enter here into the template. So opening up our template here on the event level, we will see various fields. So the first one here, this contact info box, this is going to be a text box field, similarly to this special instructions down here. They will always have this toolbar along the top, and you'll always have this spot here to edit and adjust your notes. In between those, we'll see this multiple events table. This is your basic event information, the where, when. It is customizable, what shows here on the template as well as per layout. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Continuing on, we come to our first Picklist field here. You'll see that this has a button to add from your Picklist menus, or you can add in lines manually freehand if you have, a note or something you want to add that's not in the Picklist. Continuing on here, we'll see various Picklist fields, text box fields until we get to our billing widget, which holds the financial information of the event. Lastly, we'll see our terms and conditions text box section here. And at the very bottom, we'll have our update button. Even though I didn't make any updates or really do anything, it always is just best practice to update and save as you go. So next, we are going to head over to our documents and settings. Over here on the left, our navigation panel at the bottom, I'm going to click on settings. And then underneath documents and menus, clicking on documents. So you'll notice, just like on the event level, we'll have our template bolded here on top with our layouts that live underneath that template. So you'll notice when you hover over each, you will see this edit template content button or edit layout on the right, but you can also click just directly on that text. So we'll start with the template here, which looks, again, similar to what we see on the event level. So these sections do match in the order of what we see on the event. So we have that contact, info section here, special instructions, and then that multiple events table in between. One thing to note real quick before we get into our template is this template properties button in the upper left. This is where we can adjust the name. And if you did have multiple locations, you can check off which ones do have access to this document set. Closing out of that. I do also want to touch on our document menu over here, our navigation panel. So we call this our document menu on the left-hand side. These are clickable shortcuts to each of your layouts. And if you're in a layout, back to your template. I like to think of it as like a mini version of the documents that is on the event level and back out in your documents. So the template always on top, and then these layouts that live underneath. Underneath that, you are going to see your fields, which are the sections that essentially just help you build out this template. All right, and heading over into the template, we'll see again that contact info section. You'll probably see something very similar to this in your documents when we're helping build out your site. The multiple events table, a brief overview of the event details, the when and where. And again, that special instructions food section. And then right below that, our food pick list. So these are going to look a little bit different, just like on the event level. The toolbar here is always going to be in those text box fields, like I mentioned. Just like on a Word document, if you were editing, it has the ability to bold, italicize, underline, change the font color, the size. You can use, bullets or numbers, change the formatting, the alignment. So it essentially just helps you build out, whatever you're editing here. If you want to add, clickable links to your menus, add an image of a floor plan, and so on. And underneath that food pick list is going to look a little bit different than it does on the event level. This is where you're able to restrict certain menus to pick lists. For example, you might not want, staffing or beverages or AV pick lists to show in your food section, or, reversely, if you have a ton of food pick lists, you might not want to show all of those in your beverage section. But it's probably one of the most common questions we do get here at Tripleseat is, I just entered in new menus, but they're not popping up. How come I can't use them? Where do I go? You'll just want to come over here into your document template, find that pick list that you hope for it to appear in, and then check it off here. So I'm going to save again, even though I didn't do too much, here, I do want to always save. All right, now I'm going to add in a couple sections here. So first, I do want to add in a text box field with a timeline. So underneath your fields here, we'll find this text box and hover over it, and then simply just click and drag to where you'd like that on the template to show on the event level as well. So once it's placed, we will enter in the title there. And then, we could leave this section blank and build it out as we go, but I do want to add a table that will always appear as soon as documents are created. So to do that, to access the table settings, we're going to right click. You'll notice above the table settings here, you have various fields. These are called what we call merge fields. So it's all the information that can auto-populate onto your documents. For example, we have the timing, maybe guest counts, event type, all sorts of event information, your actual location address, numbers, document fields like the ID, invoice number, and even custom fields, which is pretty great. So for example, if you wanted to build this timeline out on, arrival times, and you wanted to include the bride and groom's name that you have as a custom field, you would be able to come in here under your custom fields, wedding info, and pop in that bride and groom's name without having to manually type it. It's a pretty cool feature. But going back over to our menu, building out that table, we'll come down here, choose the size, enter in some titles. And now we kind of want to, spruce it up a little bit design-wise. So we'll want to maybe make this bolder, a little bit bigger. And then anytime we see this dotted line, that means that there is no border. So if you want to, anytime you click on a table, you'll see this row come up here. So this is for table properties. where you can add, remove rows and columns, or just delete the table altogether. But to change the top row color here, we will want to go, oh, excuse me, sorry, adding the border first. We'll click into the table properties, and then right where it says border, we'll just put a 1, and then clicking over into this advanced tab here, you can select, if you want a solid or various kinds of design border styles. We'll choose solid here. So that builds out that table. Next, I do want to change the background color of this row here, just so it kind of stands out. So to do so, again, we're going to right click rather than clicking into the whole table properties. We just want this row property area. So we'll right click, go down to the row underneath table, go to row properties, and come over to advanced and the background color. So I do happen to have a hex code here for a gray color that we like, but you can choose what you like here. Or if you do have a hex code, that matches your branding logo, you are able to enter that here to match that color. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to save just because we did do something here. And next I'm going to add a Picklist section, a new Picklist section. So to do that, underneath our fields, let's make that a little larger there. All right, so to do that, underneath our fields, we're going to find a Picklist item, and again, hover, click, drag, and drop it where you'd like it. I'm going to make it as the very last pick list here. And let's make this one a staffing pick list. Again, I do want to just restrict it, so none of my food, beverage, AV, other pick lists are going to appear on the event level, except for just that staffing pick list. Now, we do also have the option to add in an item freehand. So doing this is going to have this, whatever we enter here in settings, it's going to automatically appear just like that timeline when we make documents. So let's say that we want to add maybe a complimentary valet that we always offer for our events. Here in the long description, this could be useful for, maybe having the valet company or maybe the driver for that night, but it's not necessary. The one thing that is important to select is the category. If this just ensures that the applicable fees and taxes, everything that needs to be applied to these lines is, selected. If you forget to select it, no big deal. We do, have a little warning here that says no category is assigned. And simply all you need to do is just click back in using these 3 dots and make sure that that category is assigned there. You'll see that that gratuity checks off. All right, I'm going to save again just because we did do something here. All right, continuing on, just kind of scrolling down, we'll see various text box pick list sections until we get to that billing widget. I'm not going to go over this today because this is controlled by various aspects of settings or in settings like billing details, custom payments, and so on. But we do have a webinar coming up in a couple weeks that is fully covering this topic. So I encourage you to sign up for that, as this is a pretty fun one and gets pretty intricate. But continuing on, we do have our text box section underneath that. That's the terms and conditions section here. I'd say the number one question that we get is, how do I edit my terms and conditions? Rather than going to the contract layout itself, you're going to want to navigate here to your document template. And this is where your contract layout will pull from. However, we do have some exciting news that there is a new button on your layouts that is going to direct you here when you're trying to edit that verbiage. So it makes it a little bit easier. One thing to note is that you might see this section blank for your location. And it might say something like see templates or see templates here. And in that case, that means that your location utilizes content templates, and which are essentially that's a store text and information that you can easily plug in wherever you see this toolbar on any text box or in any text box field. So you might have, buyout terms that are different from catering terms or corporate terms that are different from wedding terms that you do want to add in on a per event basis. So in that case, on the event level, this would be blank. And then you would always use your templates button here, content templates, and add in the correct terms as you go. I do want to make note that any changes made to your terms and conditions is only going to affect newly created events moving forward. I'm not going to retroactively adjust anything on your existing events, on your past events, anything that the client could have signed off on. You don't want those changes to automatically be made. So now that we've added those sections to our template, we are going to need to add each of these individually to our layouts, as they do function independently from one another. They do pull information from the template. So with what we've done so far, we're really only going to see those sections, the timeline section and the staffing section, when we're editing an event. So just for an example as a visual, heading back over to that event that we were working on, we click into our template, we will see that newly created timeline section, and we will see that newly created staffing section. However, if we go to any of these layouts, they haven't been placed on there yet, so they're not visible yet. But heading back over to your settings, I'm going to now go into the banquet event order. So on our document menu here on the left, just clicking on our BEO shortcut. And similarly to the template, we can see the layout properties button at the top here, but it does have a bit more options to help kind of with the design. You can still edit the name, the locations that do have access to this layout. However, with the layouts, you have the ability to, change the font type and size. One thing to note really quickly about that is we do have a pretty extensive list of fonts, but if there is ever a font that you use, for branding or anything with your location, do send in a support ticket and we're happy to look into that. We are able to add some fonts, so do let us know. Continuing on here, we do have the ability to mark this document as an internal document. So if you don't want the ability to share with your clients, but just have this as a team document, you'll want to check this off here. Going forward, we do have this advanced PDF converter, which allows you to adjust the margins. And then we have our header and footer section. So this could be common for maybe like invoice numbers on your invoice layout, or I really like to add in when the document was maybe updated. So we could do that here, which I can show you on the event level. Adding to the banquet event order, there's nothing at the top here. But when we add this, it should pop up there. So updated, we can access those merge fields again by right-clicking, going down to the document field, and selecting that updated date. And even one step further, we could add the time. Close out of here, and we will save that layout, and this should pop up there. There we go. All right. So continuing on here, heading over back to this document, menu or navigation panel over here on the left. Rather than seeing fields like we do on the template, we see layout items. So what these are the sections that we see in our template. So we have the contact info, the special instructions, all the way down till we have those two new sections that we've added, the timeline and the staffing. So underneath that, real quick, we do have the design elements section as well. So we'll go over this in a little bit, but this will just kind of help us build out our layouts as well. So to add our timeline and staffing section, I'm going to find each of those underneath our layout items and drag them on to the layout where I would like them. So let's put this right underneath that multiple events table. And I do want to, add a header here like our other sections have. So I'm going to click on that section. You'll know you're in the right spot when you see the dotted line around it. So clicking on that section, going to enable that header here. And now the easiest way to add in a header rather than building that out from scratch is to copy and paste one that already exists. So clicking into this food header, I'm going to use my keyboard shortcuts to copy and paste. So I have a Apple computer. So for me, it is Command A and Command C. And closing out that editing window, clicking on that header for my new timeline section, and hitting Command V to paste it in. All right. And out of best practice again, good idea to just save. And you'll notice that, the screen does it. You don't get a notification confirmation that it's saved when you save. It just kind of has a little circle here, and you'll know that it's saved. So next, going in to add that staffing pick list, I do want to add it into this 2-column container that we have here. One thing to note is that everything needs to be on the layout before you can kind of start rearranging it. So if I were to add this staffing pick list, hovering over, clicking, dragging, and dropping, if I try to add it directly in, it's not going to let me, but it will pop it in right above. From here, once placed on the layout, you can hover over the title of that section until your mouse becomes arrows, as you can see, and then click and then drag that into that 2-column container. And you'll see that there's a little note confirming it's getting added. From there, you are able to arrange, again, by hovering over that title section and being able to rearrange it. So I would like it at the bottom here of all my pick lists. And then I do want to also enable that header. So again, clicking on that section, checking off enabling header, and then clicking into the header box, which I do still have it pasted in or copied in my clipboard. So I can just, again, press Command V to paste and adjust the header there. So now that we've had that, or now that I've added that pick list, again, I'm going to save. And it's good, as many times as you can save, it can never be enough. Now let's just say for the people that have maybe come here for, new designs, maybe rebranding, you've been using your documents, but maybe you're looking to do a little bit more customization. One thing that we see is the header colors. You're able to change really anywhere where you see gray right here, you can change that color. So like before I'd mentioned, if you have the hex code of, your logo color, or if you just want to simply, choose the color on your own, you're able to do that. So just for kind of time purposes, I'm going to just show you how to update this top one so we can, change the document title for all of our layouts. So clicking into this text box field, and we can see that this is just a single row because it doesn't have a line breaking it up. So rather than clicking on a single cell, not a row. So we'll click into, this time, our cell properties, going over to that advanced tab, and then we can just simply change this here. So maybe add a nice blue. All right, maybe I want this centered, maybe just a smidge bigger. All right. All right, so that's one way you can kind of, aesthetically change your documents a little bit. Another thing that you're able to do that we get asked about sometimes is, people want to remove this two-column container, or at least remove some of the information inside of it. For example, maybe we don't want our pick lists inside of the two-column container, but just notes, so these pick lists can run across the whole page. So rather than going in and deleting, these fields and having to add them in again, which in that case you would have to redo the header, all you need to do is just click this little arrow button, which will simply just pop it out of that pick list for you. So for this, I'm going to just remove all of our pick list items. And then I'll keep the two-column container, but just move these side by side for any notes. All right. Let's see. I'm going to save. But another thing that, we get asked about sometimes is maybe changing the logo size up here. Then one thing to note is the logo does pull from your location settings. So it is whatever you have uploaded, similar to, like your banner. So if you want to make this maybe a little smaller, this is going to be a merge field. So all we do is delete the current one, right click to enter those merge fields again, head over to our location fields, and there's a whole list of different logo sizes. Make this one a little smaller here. Another thing to note about this section is rather than putting that invoice number up here, it is popular to put it maybe in this table as well. All right. Gonna save one more time. And continuing on just a little bit, a couple things to note are these multiple events tables here. So again, it's just a snapshot of the event details for either on-premise or off-premise. So if you were to use these documents for an on-premise event, only this section would show, and vice versa. So you're able to customize these sections by clicking on them. So if you click there, you'll see various areas pop up, including the drop down to choose if it's for on-premise or off-site catered events. Change, the font size specifically for this table, and again that header color. But you're able also to select or deselect certain event details that you would like showing. So, for example, at the top here in our header, we do have the event name, and we also have the date. So you might not need that information here, but maybe just start with the time. Same with if you have, the location could be helpful if you have multiple locations, but since we just have one on our account here, we can take that one off as well. So something very, very important is the updates that you're working on here are only going to affect the layout that you're working on. So you'll need to perform all of these updates on each layout one by one. So, changing the logo size, changing that header color, adjusting what's showing in the event summary table, popping these out of the two-column container. All of that will need to be done one by one. And most importantly, the thing to note is that any of these aesthetic design changes will affect all of your past and present documents that are added to events already. So if you kind of want to do an overhaul of your documents aesthetically, but you don't want those, any of your documents that are on events currently to be affected, do let us know and maybe consider having us copy some documents over for you so you can kind of have a fresh start with the new year. So I'm going to save this layout just in case, because I don't remember if I did a second ago. But next, moving on here, what I want to do is show you this duplicate layout button. This can be helpful if you want to copy the exact layout that you're working on. For example, I want to create a new internal BEO layout, that stems from this BEO. So the easiest way to accomplish that is going to be to copy the BEO and then add or remove the sections as needed. So to do so, we will click on that duplicate layout button, and that is going to bring us to the copied version. First things first, we do want to stop in our layout properties to change that name. So I'm going to name that internal. Again, if you had multiple locations, you can check off, which one you want here. Because this is an internal document, we're going to mark that off, which is going to just remove that share button, which I'll show you here in just a couple minutes. Maybe because this is an internal document, it won't have, the header information at top. Maybe we want to make this font a little bit bigger. And then I just want to make sure that this copied over here for when it was last updated. So in closing this out, if we go over to our event, we can see it's not here yet. But as soon as I save, and then I refresh on this side, we can see that new internal BEO appear. And one thing to note is that share button does not exist here. So it won't ever be able to be shared with the client, through that share button. All right, to do some adjustments to this internal BEO, because we might not need all of the information or, the pricing for your team. We'll click into this header section here. Maybe we don't need the logo for our internal documents like the kitchen sheet or, this internal BEO. So I am just gonna delete this row altogether and delete this row. And then I'm just gonna go through each and remove the pricing that is appearing. So we don't need our staff to know the food and beverage minimum or that rental fee. And then going through each of the Picklist sections here, you can click into each, and then along the left, just check off the show pricing. So that's going to remove all of that. So they just have the basic info of what's needed for the event. And another thing to note about our Picklist sections here when we're editing them is the long description. So that's another very common thing we get asked about is how do I get that long description to show? You might have an ingredient list or detail out order counts that, your client might not need to know all of that extensive information, but your kitchen back of the house team does. So to enable that long description, you'll simply just click into the pick list in question, come down here to this drop down for the description and check off both. Then you'll see, oh, did that save? Yeah. You'll see we didn't enter anything because that's freehand there, but like food, for example, you'll see that sample long description pop up. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save again. So I think that looks, oh, actually, real quick, well, we don't need that billing section here for them either if we've removed the pricing. And we can remove that client signature. So I think that looks pretty good for an internal document. All right, next let's look at our contract layout. So over here on our document menu, clicking on the contract shortcut. Again, we're gonna add in, first just to keep the branding on point here, let's change this cell color like we did with the others. I don't remember the exact color, but that should be good. And then let's make this centered. and a little bit bigger. All right. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and add in the timeline text box section that we added and our staffing. So again, coming underneath layout items, dragging and dropping that timeline where we'd like it. Again, we'll enable that header. Not sure if that's still copied, so I'm going to go into an existing header. That text box field will open. And using my keyboard shortcuts again for an apple, we will do Command A to select everything in that text box, Command C to copy, and then head up here in our timeline header to hit Command V to paste. We'll adjust that verbiage real quick. All right, next we're going to come over here back to our layout items, find that staffing pick list, and again, dragging and dropping where we would like it. So you'll notice that these pick list items on the contract have this border. So we're able to add the border, the same area that will enable that header. So just check off the border here and enable that header. And it is still copied, so we'll do Command V to paste. All right. Perfect. So continuing on here on the contract, I did just want to reiterate that the terms and conditions are not going to be edited here on the contract layout. So clicking, if you want to edit anything, coming over to your contract layout, you'll notice that you have that black dotted border here, but when you click it, it turns red. So that tells you that you're not in the correct area yet. So it's this new little button here is really helpful, because if you do click here, it will bring you back to your template where you will be able to edit this verbiage and your contract here pulls from. So, doing maybe a couple more design elements here. I do want to add in a page break. So coming down to your design elements, find this page break. So this is a really common tool that is used. It's not going to be visible in like the portal view, but it will be when the documents are downloaded. So we'll have, the event information, and then we'll have the terms starting on a second page. Continuing on, we'll come across our signature section here, and I do want to add in a staff signature. So to do that, again, underneath our design elements, to help us build out these layouts, we'll find the signature, click, and drag and drop onto our layout. So clicking into this section, we're able to adjust the verbiage here and also make it signable only by the staff. Now you could be done here. It would function properly, but I do aesthetically, I would like it to be side by side. So again, underneath those design elements, we're going to find our 2-column container, and we're going to drag and drop it onto our layout. And then once we have everything on the layout that we want, we will hover over the header, the title sections, until our mouse changes to those arrows again. Click, drag, and drop into this container. All right, so that's looking pretty good, but the last thing I do want to do is add in our gratuity selector. One thing to note is that you can only have one gratuity selector per set of documents. So you can't have it, on your contract and then again on your invoice at the end of the event that you send the client. It has to be on just one. So I'm going to choose the contract now, and of course, at the end of the event, they're always able to add in more gratuity if they'd like. So underneath our design elements, we will find that gratuity selector and drop it in. So clicking on that section to edit, we can, adjust any of the verbiage on this side, um, add the selectable percentages, or if you want to do a flat amount, you're able to do that as well, or select both. You can adjust these percentages here, add another, and allow your guests to enter in a custom amount if they would like here. Lastly, this button here to apply automatically. That is so when your client selects the gratuity, rather than having to, see that they selected it and manually entering it in to your billing widget, it will automatically apply to that line in your billing widget. So let's make that automatically apply. And then the very, very last thing I want to do is make sure that the clients do select this. So I do want to make it required when they are signing. So I'm going to go into my client signature section, and over here on the right, check off the required gratuity selection before signable. So they first will have to select gratuity before they are able to sign. All right, I am going to save up here, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like on the event level. So again, hopping over to our sample event, we do have those new sections, the timeline and the staffing. We see our new internal BEO here, but let's hop into our BEO. You can see that change, the timeline, the staffing. See our internal BEO that has the pricing hidden and our new sections. And we can see our contract has both of those sections along with our new gratuity and staff signature section. So that brings us to an end of our webinar today. We talked about document template and layouts, both at the event level and in settings. We talked about the difference between Picklist fields and Textbox fields. I showed you how to update your terms, which I mentioned will only take place on new event documents moving forward, and also shared a couple design tips and tricks along the way. One thing I did just want to reiterate is that any design or aesthetic edits made to your layouts, such as adding, removing, rearranging sections, changing colors or logo sizes, adjusting that event summary, table, the columns, etc., those are going to affect all layouts across the board, so past, present, and future. So if you don't want anything affected from the past, do let us know, and we are happy to start you fresh, and copy your documents over for you. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining, and we really appreciate your time to go over these documents and hope that you're able to learn something new. Please do hang around for a little bit if you have any questions. And as a reminder, you will be receiving an email within a few hours of a recording of this webinar, as well as any colleagues that might have not been able to make it. Anyone who signed up will be receiving a video in that email. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.